I'm Chad Berea. I'm the Academic Vice President of Berea, and it's really an honor to welcome you here tonight on this cold, damp evening. I recall when I was a little kid hearing the story of David and Goliath for the first time, of the young David using a slingshot to topple the giant Goliath. As a kid, I wondered just how such a feat could really have been done. I was focused on the colossal size of the giant. As I've grown older, I've observed many metaphorical Goliaths, and I always marvel when the metaphorical David comes along. I remember hearing an activist at East Tennessee once inspire many by acknowledging that while the world's Goliaths are daunting, confronting them is, in fact, possible. This person then went on to recount an occasion when she saw Goliath before her with only a slingshot in hand. She said, quote, "I just felt like David, who when he went out and saw Goliath must have thought, 'He's so big, how can I possibly miss?'" End quote. At that moment, I realized how she turned upside down the encounter with Goliath. We tend to think, as I did as a child, how could I challenge Goliath? He's so big. What some of us seldom realize, however, is yes, Goliath is big, so how can I possibly miss? Tonight's film is but the latest tale of David versus Goliath. Our filmmaker, Mari-Lynn Evans, is certainly a very, very brave David, and she has looked at Goliath and realized, armed with a camera rather than a slingshot, how can I miss as I aim this camera? Think about this tonight as you watch Blood on the Mountain. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you. We might as well start off our relationship, brief as it's going to be, about a minute and a half. We might as well start off honestly. Most of you don't know who in the world I am, and that's okay. I have one distinction that nobody, even in this distinguished group, that one distinction is this. I am the only one here tonight who knows precisely what his obituary will read. Let me recite it for you. Nick Clooney, comma, brother of famous singing icon and movie star Rosemary Clooney, comma, father of Oscar-winning actor, director, producer, writer, George Clooney, comma, died today, period. As I said, this won't take long. Nina, my wife, and I drove here today specifically to stand with a company of heroes, some of them on the stage right now, some in the audience right now, but all have spent a good part of their lives battling the despoilers of our land. With whatever means at their disposal, they blocked the path of those who, for a century and a half, have sucked the life, the hope, and the future out of a region most of us have thought of as home for all of our lives. But in the interest of full disclosure, that's not the only reason I came. Nina and I, we are here tonight to salute specifically one of those heroes. For me tonight, it is the story of one woman, Nina and I met her more than 20 years ago. God, she was young. And feisty. And furious. She was something to see. She had already made herself a successful entrepreneur. But for her, that was not nearly enough. She burned to tell the story of the land and the people she loved. Her own hard-scrabbled childhood in Bulltown, West Virginia, informed the narrative for her life's work. No matter what the obstacle, no matter what the obstacle, she would make things better in her star-crossed mountains. For reasons still very mysterious to me, she decided that film, just film, a shadow on a wall, would be her medium. Of course, she knew nothing about film at all, but that was only a blip on her radar. She looked for people who could teach her. Nina and I became a very small part of her early education. As often happens, the student soon outstripped the teacher. She learned well and has the scars to prove it. Nina and I call her the pit bull of Bulltown, West Virginia. I am honored to introduce Mari-Lynn Evans.
Well, now there's somebody else on stage that knows what their obituary is going to say. It's going to say just what Nick Clooney said. But thank you all so much for being here. And I want to recognize Jordan Freeman, who's the co-director of Blood on the Mountain. And just thank Berea so much for welcoming us. It does, Berea is kind of home for us. For the last 15 years throughout filming the Appalachians to coal country and now this new film, we spent a lot of time with you and our dear friends, the people that stood beside us as we filmed and fought for the rights of the coal communities of Eastern Kentucky and Southern West Virginia that we love so much. So. This film, we started when Upper Big Branch Mine exploded April 5th of 2010, killing 29 coal miners. And having made the Appalachians with such love and nostalgia, I had to ask myself how we had gone from such a proud people to this standing, watching coal miners being carried out dead once again. And through historians and researchers and people from West Virginia and West Virginia archives and so many people, we were able to make this film. And it really is the film that tells about what happens when corporations are allowed to do whatever they want to do. And that is seen through the true 150-year history of my home state, West Virginia, which was created, the only state during the Civil War, by President Lincoln because of our great natural resources, which President Lincoln gave to northern industrialists. So the Union would be preserved and slavery would be ended. And what President Lincoln could not have imagined was what would happen to the people of West Virginia, to people whose mineral rights had been given to industrialists. And throughout the entire 150-year history, those industrialists, with their political influence, were allowed to do whatever they wanted to. So this is the story of that. This is the story of Blood on the Mountain. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Hello, hello. Yes. We're going to do the panel discussion now. Our thought was that we would spend just maybe a few seconds each giving reactions to what we have just seen from them, because this is our panel. You all have the same thing I have. What we're going to try to do is put the faces to the names for you and get these folks to do their reaction to what they just saw. But we're also, if they would like very much to have your reaction to it. That's why we have microphones here and here. So after we send us a couple of minutes up here with the experts and the pioneers, we're going to turn it over to you for your reactions. Okay, so did I start that off right? You know you're in the wrong order, don't you? You know that's right. Yeah, I understand.
All right, Miss Terry Blanton is first.
I know. We'll start with Terry Blanton. I'll do this order. Let's start. For those of you who need, when people say, for instance, that they're introducing me and that I need no introduction, they're lying. I need all the introduction I can get. So what I want you to know, that Terry Blanton is an environmental activist, Madison County KFTC member as well, and Terry is about to give us her reaction, a public reaction to what she just saw.
Well, I guess the first thing I would have to say is same story, different state. It's sad to see, and also decade after decade after decade of the same abuse that our people and our land have taken from the industry. I wrote a few notes. I don't know if we're going to ask questions or anything, but some of the things that struck me the most was I had a young brother that died from a mining accident, and they were talking about MSHA and how they always knew when MSHA was coming in. And the one thing that I think that I wish the most was I wish my little brother had thought about MSHA as being his friend rather than his enemy, because MSHA stands for Mine Safety Health Administration. I think it's just sad that it's just same story, different state, decade after decade after decade. And
let me talk to Chris Green now and see if what he just heard from Terry resonates with him as well. Chris, of course, the director of Lloyd-Jones Appalachian Center.
Yeah, Terry, it does. And I taught in West Virginia for 8 years at Marshall University, and my students were from these families, and this experience was their experience. When Upper Big Branch happened, the only survivor had a niece in my class. The people whose water was being poisoned were the people in my classes. The people who were working in the mines, their fathers and their husbands were in my classes. And what I saw up there tonight does justice to these people's experiences that I came to be so close to. And to say that it does justice to the complexities and difficulties and realities before them is something that we all need to hear.
I wanted to ask Silas House, who's the author of many wonderful books, including my favorite, which is Cold Tattoo, but Something's Rising was great as well. I'd like to get from you there, it seems to me the sense of the tensions between the two sides is especially dramatic and especially disheartening in that there are no villains here. As far as the workers on both sides have a very legitimate beef. Both of them are trying to figure out how to survive for a region that they love. I'm also from Kentucky, but of course those of us from Kentucky understand the same dichotomy of view about tobacco that we remember and what happened in that case. Your thoughts, Silas?
Well, I spent most of the movie fighting back tears or in tears, mostly because my grandfather died of black lung. Yeah, he was a coal miner. He worked in deep mines. He lost his leg in the mines, et cetera, et cetera. And so I come from a coal mining family, and I really understand that complexity. But at the same time, I'm still just, my stomach's in knots because I'm so angry. I'm sad and I'm angry because that balance is not there, and the balance is so far on the side of the corporations, which have all the rights of individuals but none of the responsibilities. And so it's just maddening. I think it's Mari-Lynn's best film, and I want to thank her for making it and for all the hard work she's done on it.
Amen to that. Yes. Way to go. I finally see a fella here is almost as old as I am, and I'm thrilled about it here. You know what I would like to talk to you about, Loyal? This is, of course, Loyal Jones, the retired director of the Loyal Jones Appalachian Center. I'd like to talk to you about the maturing of that anger, how serious and how long-term and how intense the anger we have seen on both sides, and that has poisoned, it seems to me often, with the exploitation of the anger, has poisoned the opportunity for us to come to a meeting of solutions. Have you found that to be always true?
Well, I'm really conflicted in what to say first. I think it's a splendid movie. I know these stories, I've heard them and I know about them, but I've never seen it told so well as I think through this. The conflicting thing, and the thing that is troubling me now that I'm thinking about, I've known the old United Mine Workers of the past, and they had jobs, but they weren't being paid much. They didn't have safety. They didn't have pensions and all of that. But how in the present day, those very people with diminishing jobs have turned in so many ways from the values and the commitments of their forefathers in now worrying about trading the environment for jobs. And that word jobs has come to bother me a great deal, because most of the people who talk about it seem to be doing it from the corporate side. They're providing jobs. That's the great thing they do. And of course, we know that, and we live by that. But on the other hand, it seems to be that jobs for those people, as they have been treated, are not foremost in their minds, but profits and power and that sort of thing. This troubles me greatly, and I don't know how we come together to deal with it in this age. Perhaps the elections coming up, the way things are shaping, we have some clear choices.
Well, I certainly hope you're right about that. Seem clear to some of us, but Nick, I haven't talked to you. Nick Mullins, who's the blogger who is the thoughtful coal miner. That's the blog. And as I listened, I was making notes to myself as I was watching the film, and it just came clear to me as an overall thought that the coal fields, those coal fields that we saw and see and live with and go by every day, were always the crucible of America's labor movement. And unions have been in the crosshairs of government now for 2 generations. There's always been the tension, but it's been very specific about the national and state governments have been anti-union for a long time. You sense that as well. Did this bring that even closer to home to you?
It does. And, you know, within this film, we see the contention between the mine workers and what they're standing to lose, you know. It's not just about the jobs, but it's also about those pension plans. It's about the health care benefits. My grandfather and my father are both dependent upon those. They need it for their health care, as well as my mother and my grandmother. So, you know, whenever there's not as many miners mining coal and as many union members out there contributing back to those pensions, you know, it's a scary thing for a lot of people. And whenever it comes to the how the government plays a role in that, and the way that they have been so anti-union with all these right-to-work laws, it's really disheartening to see this decline continue and continue. So we need films like this to kind of show that the unions are still there, that there's people that still need help, and that we have to really step in there and work towards a better future. The question was posed in the film to Cecil Roberts, if there was, government assistance that could provide those the job retraining, to bolster the pensions and the health care, would you consider that? And at that time, there wasn't. But now there's the Power Plus plan. Yeah. And Obama is trying to push that through to do exactly that. So, but we have to see what happens within this next election and further on and keep fighting.
We live on those tiny glimmers of light and hope out there, don't we?
Yes,
I want to make sure that I want to keep open for you. I know you can be a little mic shy, but those of you who have something to say or some question to ask of our panel, you are certainly open to do that right now, and we'd be delighted to do it. I will come down and walk you by the hand to the microphone, if it will make you feel better, because we really want to get your impressions, particularly Mari-Lynn and all those who produce this film. They want to get how this has impacted you. Yes, right here, right, that microphone right there. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Tyler Surgeon. I teach general studies and history programs here. As a West Virginian, I want to say thank you for telling our story so well. It's just, it's perfectly poignant the way it's done. My question is, for those of us who teach courses that in some way touch on the historical and contemporary realities that the film covers so well. I'm thinking of you, Mari-Lynn. What would you want to make for certain that we got across to our students, that they learned and knew about all of this going out into the world?
You're up, Mari-Lynn.
I guess that history is a weapon, and that to tell the truth is something that is heaven sent and hell proof. The truth is I mean, it's, you talk about if you don't know history, you're condemned to repeat it. And I guess my hope was at the end of this that we are not condemned to repeat our past. This is an incredible moment in our history as Appalachians and as West Virginians for us to step up as leaders, step up in our own lives, step up in this moment, and join together as we've been working with the White House and the Power Plus program and that $5.5 billion to recreate, to reinvest, to rethink who we are and what our future is. But there is no one coming on a white horse for us. And I often think of what Judy Bonds, who was really the matriarch of the movement to end mountaintop removal, said. She said, "You are the one you've been waiting for. It's up to you." And honest to God, that's the truth. I realized it in my own life. And I think, as people and certainly, as artists, I prayed when I was young that I'd have the chance to do something special. And I always thought, boy, if I ever do, if I ever get the chance to do something special, I'm going to do my best. And I am. I've had that chance. And I think that chance, that moment comes for all of us. And maybe we're all here tonight because we're in that moment right now.
Good.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Well, I don't think you've done your best yet.
You're a harsh taskmaster, I would tell you.
I really liked how you linked history across time that you went back and showed some systemic issues. I like how you named institutionalized industry. And I guess what I want is, since we're the ones we've been waiting for, the solutions that we need. Let's tell the other story of Appalachia. Let's tell the story of the root diggers who were here before. How our roots support a $40 billion a year health industry around the world. And why are we so held back from being able to fully participate as born and bred Appalachians in helping restructure? We don't need the mono-economy of coal or timber, the institutionalization of those industries. So I think the best story yet to be told is the continuing story.
I agree. Thank you so
Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead. Anybody else on the panel want to build on that one?
I was going to address that the previous question over here. That as far as ways to educate students, one thing that we also need to realize is that we're all participants in what's happened in Appalachia. And continuing to happen. Right now, the lights that are shining on us are powered by coal. 92% of the power generated in Kentucky comes from coal. Some of that's from Appalachia. Some of it's being trained in from places or from Western Kentucky, Southern Illinois, all over the nation. And the way that we use energy and the way that we use resources affects other people in other places. It's destroyed our home. It's destroyed my children's home. We can't move back. We don't have a water source. All that history, everything that we have is been obliterated. So we have to realize that and start pushing the knowledge onto students that we do have a responsibility in the way that we live to be able to help stop these things from happening.
This is exactly what I was thinking all during this movie. And I hope that all of you here can address one aspect or another of that. Here was my thought as I was watching these devastating pictures and hearing these devastating comments from these folks. We have burned the bones of our prehistory in our coal-fired culture for a century. Okay, what about a century from now? What does Appalachia look like 50 years, a century from now? Terry.
Well, I know there's lots of streams that's almost impossible to clean up. Our water is poisoned. We have to figure out ways that we can reclaim our streams and put them back to normal, if that's possible. I would love to see us going back to our original roots and being people of the earth and take care of the earth and be happy to have the water. And those with the water will be the survivors in the end. And if you look at the state of Kentucky, we're second only in bodies of water to Alaska. And it's unfortunate that most of the streams in our state are not safe to drink from. So I would hope that we figured out a way to reverse the damage that we've done and create energy in a more sustainable way and think about working for our future not just being a job, but something that benefits ourselves as well as others.
Loyal, you and I are the only two probably in the building who are in our 8th decade here. And for that reason, I'd like you, while both of us are, still upright, you and I should, it seems to me, if we've thought about things much, and I know you have, we should be able to put shape around what the future might be based on the things we knew and saw when we were 10 or 9. What was Appalachia like then? What's moving forward from age 10 till now? It's not been good news. Generally speaking, it's been a deterioration of what we knew when we were that age. What can you see, or can you see anything of the reversal that Terry was trying to describe? Do you have hope? Is that a practical, a realistic
Well, I don't know,
hope?
but I got to thinking when you were talking about this. I'm working on a book about 4 guys, but 2 of the guys were from Eastern Kentucky. One of them went because of World War I, was in France, and so he went to the Sorbonne and got a PhD in languages and wrote his dissertation on the folk songs of Eastern Kentucky. And he played the dulcimer and he gave ballad recitals all of his life. But he thought in writing his dissertation, he was putting the culture to rest. He said the folk song will be no more because of the coal mines and the railroads and all of the things that are happening, and the educational systems who scorn the old ways of the mountaineers and to teach them better English and better literature and so forth. The other was Cratus Williams, who wrote a 1,560-page dissertation for New York University. He was a poor boy from over in Lawrence County, and it was on the Southern Mountaineer, in fact, in fiction, which he thought was putting the Appalachian culture to rest. And he said in a movie, the Appalachian culture in 10 years will be no more. So both of these people were laying the culture to rest. But I just want to make a point that apparently it's more resilient than that. You know. I think the other point is it doesn't have anything probably to do with this, but George Mitchell's name came up in my mind because I saw him on TV not too long ago talking about voting, that people don't vote out of reason. And I've often said the human race is not a rational one.
Isn't that the truth?
Well, we don't vote out of reason, we vote out of self-interest. And that's been no more made clear, I think, here than the swing of the United Mine Workers. Because I think we have to recognize these things in ourselves. And I worry about today's elections and so forth because false things and most of what we deal with are not quite true. It's what we believe and want to believe. But it seems to me that we have to begin to sort out what is true and act upon that and somehow try to reconcile these competing forces of sometimes very good people who have different commitments in the world.
And yet explain to me this. You were talking about we vote our self-interest usually.
Yeah.
How do we explain that we vote against our clear and obvious self-interest?
There's been, one big book about what's wrong with, what's that state? Kansas, about that very thing. And I've noticed this, I hate to, I've always called myself a populist. And I got to thinking about that, and I'm an ex-populist now, because I used to believe that the common people, or that people, would come up with the right things and do the right things. Well, it's hard to believe that today.
We have someone waiting at the microphone, please.
So I think that this film did an effective job of really evoking human emotion, as could be seen from the reaction of the crowd. However, I don't think that it really touched on the long-term ecological impacts of having mountains stripped of biodiversity, and I was wondering if you guys could please educate me on some of those impacts.
Anyone want to take that one on? You're up.
So we've lost over 1.5 million acres, and this is numbers of probably 7 years old. 1.5 million acres of some of the most diverse hardwood forests in the world. Appalachia is second only in biodiversity to the rainforest in Brazil. The animal and plant species are just spectacular. The destruction of the waterways, I mean, probably 10 years ago was about 2,000 miles of streams had been completely buried or destroyed from mountaintop removal. And you can go to some of those valley fills that you've seen, and you can go back 20 years later, and the water isn't any better in 20 years than it was when it was first put in. So the impact is great, and it's something that we really need to be looking into. How do we correct what we've done and the damage that we've done to the environment today? But imagine 1.5 million acres, and these are numbers like 7 years ago, so I'm sure there's been many thousands of acres that's added since then.
So what are the future impacts of having mountains that are bare as far as the environmental part of it?
Well, let me see if I can explain this a little bit. So if you take the mountain and all the elements and the minerals and stuff that's inside of the mountain, and you turn it upside down, you blow it up and you turn it upside down, so everything that used to be inside of the mountain is now leaching into the rivers and streams. So we need some revegetation. We need to pass some laws on the federal level that we've been working on the stream protection rules that says you can't mine within 100 feet of a stream for 10 years, 12, 15. Then also the dumping of waste, the Clean Water Protection Act that we've been working on the federal level that turns the Clean Water Act back to its original intent, that says you can't dump any waste in any stream. And the former administration changed co-waste to fuel to allow the dumping of the waste into the stream. So the biggest thing is protecting the water and working on laws to protect the water in the future. And the Power Plus plan that they were talking about was putting millions or billions, it's actually billions of dollars back into the co-producing states to do reclamation of cleaning up an area, but also cleaning it up in a way that would create jobs for the future or careers for the future. And unfortunately, we can't get that. The president wants the money to come to the co-producing counties or the co-producing states, but we can't get them billions. We got a bipartisan bill right now in Congress that's going to put a few million, but not the billions. Remember how much it is? But it's millions as opposed to billions. So.
Just to put some parameters on this, it looks as though we have about another 10 minutes of discussion. And I have one waiting over here. Why don't we do this right now?
Thank you. I'm Pam Shaughnessy, and I live in Berea. I am an owner-operator of a small business. I provide research services and use high-speed internet access. I've lived in some rural areas in Madison County and have been really challenged at other times transferring files and obtaining data and stuff. And I was wondering if it was naive to think that high-speed internet access would be a great way to, unify the rural communities of Appalachia.
I'm so glad you said that. We're very blessed in that with this film, our national outreach partners are both the AFL-CIO and the Sierra Club, and Amnesty International, and the Poor People's Campaign, and Poverty Initiative, and grassroots groups like Appalachia Voices, and Coal River Mountain Watch, and KFTC, and we have all these different national and grassroots organizations we're working with. And so at some point, I called all of my genius friends. I think Nick was out of town at the time, but and I said, what is the Marshall Plan for the coal fields? There's got to be a Marshall Plan. There's got to be a New Deal. What is it? And I do believe it is high-speed internet. I absolutely do. I think it's a lot like with radio. When radio came to Appalachia, we were connected with the rest of the world, and the rest of the world was connected to us because they heard our stories and histories in those folk songs and those tunes on the radio. And you have people in South Korea that can do business all over the world. You have people in southern West Virginia that don't have cell phones and no cell phone coverage. If you look at the map of Appalachia, it is stunning how much of Appalachia, the poor sections, are not connected to the rest of the world. And without that connection, that just, it seems like something so essential, so critical, and based on our history of the radio and how that transformed Appalachia, and that is something we can do. And I do know that President Trump of the AFL-CIO and former President Bill Clinton have really been working with lots of groups and organizations on doing that. And that's one of the outreach plans for this film. We picked up for theatrical distribution, and we'll begin that on April 5th, 2016, 6 years after UBB. The day Don Blankenship is sentenced is the day this theatrical film will be released. All over the country, Mr. Blankenship, speaking to the mic. And then we'll be on national PBS. But listen, we're working with AFL-CIO. We're going to be in 20,000 union halls across America, working with Sierra Club, App Voices, to do house parties. There's a lot of outreach that comes with this film.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. And can we have another one? Yes, please.
Hello. I just would like to say you were talking about we still have the unions, which we do. I started in the coal mines in 1968, and I have been a UMWA member ever since, still am. But here in the state of Kentucky, we no longer have any UMWA at all. They're all gone now.
There are no UMWA coal miners left in Kentucky.
No.
Not a one.
So as a result of that, something that has really been eating at me, our legislature here in the state of Kentucky, we had one distinguished senator that just this week decided that he would introduce a bill that would do away with all mine foreman training, which really doesn't make a lot of sense because the bill was passed in 2007 as a result of the Kentucky Derby disaster. No, we don't have any union. We have union members. But it's sad to say that what union members that we do have just, to me, have thrown their hands up and given up. I'm 70 years old. I haven't given up.
Let's hear it. Yes.
And I will never give up.
Amen.
That's right.
Amen.
I don't know. I sent an open letter to Senator Brandon Smith that introduced that bill. I sent an open letter to him and all the other Kentucky legislators. Hopefully it'll be published as an op-ed in in the near future in the Lexington Herald.
Good.
But my point is, until we get some kind of support from the people of Kentucky that will stop these legislators from taking away the miners' protection, what miners that we do have working, they're not going to be working long.
Amen. Thank you very much for that. It's very good to hear. And just to make the point with you, sir, we didn't get a chance to meet. I'm happy to be able to tell you that I'm a member of 4 unions, and I'm even paid up, which is odd enough. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, we have another voice over here. Great. Would you go ahead, please?
Hi, my name is Aubrey Smith. I'm a student at Berea Community. I was wondering how I and my peers can make an impact towards this and put something forth.
Toward your point is you want to get involved in saving what is left and reversing some of the terrible things that have been happening in Appalachia.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great softball right there.
Thank you.
Right. Good. That's wonderful. And let's see. I don't think I've heard a thing from you, Silas, in a while. Let me know.
Well, the only way I've ever known how to fight this is through art, through words and music. I think that words and music have done a whole lot in this movement, and telling people about it, reminding people that this goes on. A whole lot of people don't know that this goes on, so being vocal about it, being the generation that changes politics in Kentucky would be great. If you could clean out the house up there and start all over. The big thing is just being aware and being conscious, and I'm really thankful to you for being that obviously you are.
Yeah, if there's something specific, is there?
I can give you.
Let me hear something specific.
So there's a great organization, and we have a chapter here in Madison County called the Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, and there's also the Sierra Club, so there's organizations that can help you get involved and also help you with your, you could start a student group and the student group be a part of the larger organizations to make change.
A really great,
or you could call me. I'll get you started.
A really great website to look at is ilovemountains.org, and it'll give you all kinds of great information. There's videos and lots of really accessible information on there. That's the Appalachian Voices website, so it's a really good place.
Actually, that's the Alliance for Appalachia's website. Appalachian Voices just created, but it was created for the Alliance for Appalachia.
All the groups,
yeah. So it's the Alliance for Appalachia has 15 organizations across Central Appalachia, and I Love Mountains is a representation of it's created by Appalachian Voices,
right,
but it's a website for the Alliance for Appalachia.
I would like to say just a word about Kentuckians for the Commonwealth. I think it's the most effective and the best organization certainly I've ever been involved with, and I remember it all the way back to Joe Zakos, and I know there are county chapters and people can go join and everything, but when you think of the broad form deed and unmined minerals taxes and all the other good causes they have done, I know about the other supporters you have now, but I want to say a word for this wonderful organization.
That's great. I think, I'm sorry, you wanted to...
Real quick, save energy. Don't waste so much. Shorter showers, all that basic stuff, and, spread the word. We need to use less resources.
Do we have, I think we have time for one more. Are you heading up toward a microphone? Great. Sometimes I think you might be heading toward
I'm David Fields from Richmond. I'm wondering, as we see fracking coming into the picture more and more, have you thought about this vis-a-vis fracking, and do we have lessons from you that we can apply towards that?
Good one. Fracking?
Well, fracking is another extractive industry, another fossil fuel industry. My friend and partner Josh Fox made the great films Gasland and Gasland Part 2, and Josh and I went up hollers for 2 years with Coal Country, preaching about mountaintop removal coal mining and Gasland about fracking. It's the same as what's happened with the coal industry, if not worse. And so, I think it just brings us to the point that we understand we're we're all part of one movement. It's called the human movement. It's the human struggle. We're all on this mortal coil. Here we are. And, it's really up to us to stand up for ourselves and our brothers and sisters, because these corporations are godless. We are not. And without justice, there is no humanity. So the fight for the human struggle is indeed worth it. That fight is absolutely worth it, because without that fight, we have nothing. And I am very hopeful. I feel we are all empowered to having knowledge and having concern that we can accomplish. We created the we fueled the Industrial Revolution, right? Right? Yes, we absolutely did.
On that optimistic note,
yes,
that will be our valedictory for this evening. We'd like to thank you so much for being here. Would you help me thank these men and women?